Okay, this is are you ready for me to start?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
This is the City Commission work session meeting, Thursday, November 18th at 5, a little after 5. And roll call, please.
Sorry about that. Mayor Litchfield,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Duplantis,
Here.
Commissioner Moya,
Here.
Commissioner Guerrera, Commissioner Arias.
First on the discussion is regarding the appointment of a municipal judge for the remainder of 2021. I was asking Mark why this was put on here. I don't see any reason why we have to appoint one. He'll take office in January, right?
No, we have to appoint somebody to fill the judge that left us. And then he starts his term in January.
Well, yeah, but that just gives
No.
him.
Well, I think what it was is when we were looking to,
No, we have to do it official because actually the other one retired. And then,
No, she took another job.
yeah, but left, in other words. So therefore, that term has to be completed because actually the judge municipal does not start until January the 20th. That's when he's supposed to start.
Well, but what I'm asking is why are we waiting till now to do it when she resigned several months? I mean, she started her new job several months ago. Why are we just now doing it?
Well-
Because when it came up the last time, the commission didn't feel comfortable just having one applicant. So they wanted to wait until
it
the
was
election.
so close to the election that we had decided
That's
to wait till
exactly
the
what we
election
said.
and then appoint whoever wins, because we'd have to send, if the guy we appointed didn't win, they would have to send somebody else to the school.
Okay.
So it was kind of,
It's the financial situation. Yeah, we made it very clear because it was like a month or so before the election was held, that why just not wait until who runs and wins. Not because it's just one
Okay,
application.
so y'all discuss away, I guess.
if he's ready to take the helm, I have no problem.
I talked to him, he's ready, I think so. I don't see a problem. The problem is that it seems like we can't enforce the nuisance ordinance or any of that because of the fact is we don't have a court or a judge. And I think, I don't know about the tickets that they're giving, if they're giving any tickets or anything, because of what's happening. And so, we might as well go ahead and see if he wants to take it and let him get at it.
Okay, then next is discussion of the cannabis ordinance.
I didn't put
I have
this
no
on the
idea why that's
agenda.
on there either,
I
so.
think a lot of it,
I put it on there for a few reasons. Angelica, Vicky and I had the opportunity to sit on the municipal league's update. And I wanted to bring to attention to the commission that I feel there's a few things that we have that could possibly raise some concerns that may not be exactly kosher with the direction maybe the state's going. With that being said, I just want to bring some of those key points up. One of them in our ordinance, it states that you're not allowed to, I guess, I should have been a little bit more prepared on this, see any of the product from the street side. Everything had to be enclosed. The way I interpreted it from the meeting, I could be wrong. And I have our city attorney, Mr. Randy Medfleck, online as well for some guidance. But I feel we're restricting certain things a little bit too much and we're setting ourselves up for a potential lawsuit. With that being said, when it comes to visualizing things, we talked about signage, we talked about visualizing product from the street side. The way I interpret it, and I could be wrong, is that you should not enforce it any more strict than you would on a normal business. For example, signage. We can't dictate what kind of content can be placed on the sign, rather than just the square footage, as we typically do in our regular planning and zoning ordinance right now. For example, it's so many square feet of signage per store frontage, or you're limited to a number of signs for that building. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. The other thing that had come up was, I believe, the growing, where we had talked about is restricted only to A1 zoning. Another issue that was brought up was the location. we got to the point where we said you cannot have dispensary 150 feet from a second dispensary to avoid, I guess if you would, cannibalism or oversaturating the market for competition. I know Roswell have put some things into place where a mile from one to the other.
Yes.
So again, just advising and being transparent, trying to let the commission and the public know that, like Mr. Van Vleck said last meeting, this is a working document. Even though we adopted this ordinance, rules and regulations are still being put into place. We won't know exactly what everything is 100% till January 1. And I just want to be aware of that we may have to go back and amend our current ordinance just to make sure we're in compliance, that we're not stating illegal, and that we're not setting ourselves up for any liability in the form of a lawsuit.
Well, in the ordinance, though, we have put in there several times that it be in keeping with what the state mandated. You know,
We
because
have-
they do supersede us.
They do, that's correct, but there's a few things though that are under more specific to individual sections that might get us in some hot water. And I just want to bring that to everyone's attention, that way we know from the
Okay.
get-go.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's also, the attorney's opinion. It's not a fact, it's just his opinion. So I understand that.
And
After our
hopefully
meeting-
it's been a municipality and a lower level of rules or, ordinance.
Mhm.
What is not in what is not considered to be in the state, we can actually add on to. Because that's allowed for the municipality to make those rules.
Mhm.
If we want to keep the 150 feet apart from each, that's up to the city of Tucumcari.
Mhm.
Because in the state of New Mexico, it doesn't say anything in the ordinance so far that I can read.
And it's within
What were you
reason.
gonna say?
What I was gonna say is, after the meeting with the state, like we have churches in our ordinance,
Mhm.
that's a no-no. We can't put those in there. If it's, near schools, like if it's a church that teaches children,
Mhm.
they have to be a licensed daycare before we can apply that rule towards it.
Well, I can understand
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
and
I can
we never
understand.
we never said that wasn't,
Mhm.
you know, what we considered. You know,
Yeah.
everything, like I said, it's in keeping with the state.
And actually, I knew about the church that we couldn't, it didn't count in there.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of this is open for interpretation because it's so new, it's within reason.
Right.
But what's the reason? Right now, there's no case law for this. This is new to New Mexico. So, but my main thing, I don't want to be the guinea pig and be the example on what not to do.
Right.
Well, you know, really, they can't come back and sue us for something if the state hasn't even laid out a certain mandate. We've been instructed by the state to come up with some type of ordinance,
Mhm.
and which we've done, and it's actually kind of a simple ordinance.
Right.
We didn't go out and reinvent the wheel. You know, we actually just went off of what most of the state mandates and what everybody else is doing, going off the liquor laws and everything else as a guidance. And we left our ordinance open that it would be in keeping with whatever the state mandates. So if the state finally comes out with something, we can amend that order easily because that's what we've put in most parts of our cannabis.
Either that or we can avoid that part of the ordinance.
Exactly.
Because actually it's already covered the state.
Mhm.
So actually what I'm looking, and also on, allowing to see the product, from the street, I think that's pretty much, how it is on medical cannabis now. And actually the only thing they have, if you go to any of the dispensaries, you got a waiting room, you know, where you go in, which you can, they can be open or whatever.
Yeah.
But, none of the products is displayed, they're displayed in the back part, the secure part, because you also have to keep it secure.
Mhm.
So I don't see a problem with what we have. The only thing is, like what she said about the churches, I had heard that because I was at the legislature when they were
Yeah,
arguing about that.
Yeah.
That churches do not count.
And I agree with the city manager. We need to keep our eyes open for whenever the state does finally put something, you know, in writing. And, of course, I won't be here, but, at that point, you know, pick it up and try to amend whatever needs to be amended.
And we were going along with that, but I think somebody wanted the church to be close. One of the ones that would be included in there because it's not included in the state, according to a lot of people. So actually, we can just crash off that part.
What else, Mark?
I wanted to ask Vicky if she had any other comments based on the planning and zoning conference she attended.
so basically it was the churches for one thing. The signage, of course, is, you can't, the content, but it is true that you need to keep the cannabis, the actual can be separate, doesn't need to be on the window.
Mhm.
So that's, what else was it?
Wait a minute, wasn't there something in that workshop where they said, that you cannot do growing and dispensing at the same time?
No.
Where did I hear that? heard
I
it
don't
from somewhere.
Because you can actually do it all in one building if you have an,
By the state law?
Mhm.
Okay, because somebody was talking to me about it, and I said, not to my knowledge.
because you can do the hydro in the back
Okay.
and then grow, and then sell it in the front.
And I think that was discussed last commission meeting, because we had the attorney here from Albuquerque representing the client that stated that our current ordinance didn't allow for that. As it stood, he'd have to apply for a variance through our typical planning and zoning process.
But that was also because the school across the street. Because where he's wanting to do it, the
Oh,
school
you
across the
mean,
street,
the college?
the college.
Does it apply to college or just secondary?
I don't know. It doesn't really specify.
Well,
It
it's not
doesn't
across the street, it's right next to
Yeah.
I think all schools, but
university, in other words.
Yeah, anywhere that there's learning, I think it's not allowed. And we can do the 150 feet apart.
Mhm.
We're gonna have to figure out how to use some software so we don't get those lost, but yeah. The churches know, signage, we have to treat them just like everything else.
So they could put a plant on their sign?
Mhm.
yes, you can't regulate content, just
On the
size,
sign.
It's like-
maybe setback.
And that's mostly what we're talking about, signs.
Mhm.
Because actually, when you want huge, blocking the whole downtown
Yeah,
view
but
of
we
the
have
buildings and
rules.
everything
We
else.
already have rules in place for that anyway, so.
You're gonna say something?
I was just gonna ask if the signs were able to follow the historic overlay stuff
Well, we got an ordinance.
and look and stuff.
So since there's a pre-existing ordinance for the overlay zone for Route 66, I think that would apply. Again, there can't be any favoritism or any discrimination, in my opinion, towards them just because they're in the cannabis industry. So I do not think they'd be exempt from the Route 66 overlay design requirements.
In prior years, we've been kind of lean on that because we needed businesses here, so if they're gonna bring in a business, we're gonna let them. So, but now I think if we're gonna, the cannabis, I think it would behoove our town to actually have it look
Mhm.
the part.
Okay.
Okay, what else, Mark? Anything?
Randy, any additions, deletions, corrections, anything I might have said? You're on mute, sir.
Gotcha. Yeah, a couple things that I heard through the discussions. First things first, be very, very careful with respect to any variances that you might be considering. I do not think you have the authority to grant the variance to say, shorten the 300 feet, whatever the statutory
that
minimum is, you can't go below that. You just
No,
can't.
that's state.
That's one of the areas where the kind of like, yeah, the liquor laws allow you to do that, or used to allow you to do that, but I don't think you're gonna be able to do that here, so. If it's a pre-existing business, or say it's a pre-existing business in the overlay zone or somewhere, we pass this new ordinance, then they're gonna be subject to your non-conforming use provisions. Which means they won't be able to expand on their use, they'll have to, keep the use the same. And so we can deal with those kinds of non-conforming uses. As far as some of the provisions we put in our location response, section 6, those are a little bit aggressive. That's what you guys wanted. Like I said, this is a work in progress. If we get challenged and we don't want to fight it, we can drop the church, we can drop the 150 feet of other existing ordinances. The challenge here is this. They gave us some specific locational limitations on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they said you can regulate reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And so they kind of give with one hand and take with the other. So without a lot of guidance. So, I don't think any of these restrictions that are in here now are unreasonable, but that's going to be subject to challenge and subject to, our appetite for litigation if it comes to that. with respect to visible product. That's the law with respect to medical. I don't see that it's an unreasonable requirement. Although if you go up to Washington State, I mean, you could, the glass enclosure, you can see all kinds of products. So that's, that's their take on it. Let's see, what did I miss? Limiting production to A1 zones, I'm not sure that I have a problem with that. I mean, you don't want to have, except for personal consumption, people are allowed to have 12 mature plants as a right. And so even in a C1, even in a residential zone, it's just the commercial grows that we're talking about that we want to limit to the A1 zones. And I think that's totally appropriate because you've given them, an outlet for taking care of business. And I think you're absolutely right. I think Mark is sitting, when we get the signs, we can only, restrict the regulation of signs to non-content related things, signs, appearance. We could prohibit flashing signs, for example, or signs that move, or signs that have sound associated with it. We can do those types of things, but we can't regulate, the content. So if someone wants to put a marijuana leaf on their sign, I think we're probably stuck with that. Did I miss anything?
Sounds good.
Designation consumption area. We talked about this a little bit last time. I did some research, and yeah, it does appear that you can have outdoor grows if you want in outdoor consumption areas. But the challenge is going to be confining the smell, and so you're going to have to be the judges of what's in the best interest of the city with respect to that. But outdoor, large outdoor grows and large or designated consumption areas outdoors are going to be problematic from a smell perspective.
Actually, we don't have that big of a land here anyway, so it'd be pretty small. You're looking more at 200 growers license than anything else.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. My neighbor has a plant in his front yard,
Mhm.
and if you get close enough to that, it gives off a very distinct odor. It's kind of interesting. I never thought one plant would do that, but it does.
We're used to the feedlots and also to the treatment plant. It stinks like heck sometimes.
Yes.
North side of town. Yeah. So
Not
I
just
don't
north
think the
side, it comes to my side too.
yeah, but I mean, I live only a block away from it.
Yeah.
And it seems like that thing stinks all the time when it's not well kept.
So,
No, all in all, I think this is it's in good shape with the proviso, like Mark said, that we may have to amend it based upon what other guidance, if any, we get from the state, and whether or not anybody wants to challenge the reach that we did take.
I think the church might be the one more challenging because I mean, people are looking at there on First and the Boulevard area. There's some area buildings that they were looking at, and the church is so close that I think that might be the only thing that might be challenged because of the availability of
And I
buildings.
think it's really going to depend upon how many locations you have, how limiting this language is. If there's sufficient places to put establishments, they may find it's not worth the fight and go elsewhere.
Well, I don't know. Some people are pretty determined.
So when it comes to business licenses, are we gonna do first come, first serve on applications?
No.
When it comes to the 150 feet?
That's been my other concern, how we
Oh,
regulate
yeah.
that.
That's the way. That's the only way you can do it.
That's my
And
thought.
does the time start after January 1st? Or can we start accepting applications now?
Well, for those that actually already have a license for medical, if they're already established,
We
They're
don't
not
have any
moving.
No,
here.
I'm not talking about
Yeah, I know.
medical, I'm talking about
But-
the recreational.
but if they switch to recreational, they're still established.
They're grandfathered, but we
The
don't have
application
any,
that I've
right?
received, the application that I've received is a recreational application.
Uh-huh.
My understanding is that the state, when you request your application, in that application, they're gonna have a provisional license that will be brought to me, sent over to your office. We all have to approve it. I give it back to the applicant sends it back to the state with their application, and the state then gives a permit. The applicant then comes to my office and I officially issue that license, correct? So my question is, when it comes to the 150 feet, how are we gonna honor those applications? Is it gonna be first come, first
It's
served?
gonna have to be first come, first served.
Yeah.
But like I'm saying, if there's a medical, business right here and they wanna open a, recreational right next door, we can't, unless you guys are okay with that. But I think everything needs to be, because the medical can actually change to recreational as well.
Well, most of them are gonna go recreational.
Yeah.
Most of the ones that talked to me said they're
Uh-huh.
going recreational.
Yeah.
But the whole deal, we don't have any applications right now, right?
Yes, I have one application,
And
but
then-
it's not from the state. It's our own, city of Tucumcari application, business license application,
Oh, okay.
which I have not done anything with because my understanding is, like I explained,
We still have to
we're
work.
gonna get the provisional license from the state. So I guess that's my question, is at what point do we,
Well, first come, first served.
Yeah,
That's the way
that's-
to go.
Yeah, it's only,
It's only the fair
I
way to do it.
mean, other than that, then we really, now we're making choices that are discriminating.
so is it first come, first served from this application that I received? Or is it first, come, first served from the January 1st when the applications are to be distributed?
was there anything, I'm just curious, is there anything wrong with them getting their business license now?
They can't. I have to have a permit first.
We have.
If
it
I give them a
internally.
business
But
license,
you
who's
can
gonna
hold
say
it.
they're gonna get a permit?
Is there,
You can hold their application.
yeah, could you hold their application?
Their application's gonna be different from the provisional application from the state, I believe.
Okay, I'm kind of.
So,
No, the whole deal is that, let's say, for example, I decide to have one right away, okay? Let's say down at the building, I have a 424. Okay, I come to you and I say, Angelica, I need a business license. You say, boy, I can't give you a cannabis, a dispensary unless you have a provisional one. But then you have, but I can more or less put an application, not an application, but put a intention that that's what I want to do. You know what I mean? And then I'll say, this is the first, and I can give it in writing, this is why I want it. Then come January the 1st, I send the whole stuff to the state. The state just says, yeah, Moya, you qualify. Then I bring my provisional to you. And then after I bring my provisional to you, you issue me the license, then I send it back to the state, and then they send me my license.
So do I understand that you guys are directing me to go ahead and accept the application that I have now?
We're gonna have people
And-
coming in, they wanna buy
Yeah.
buildings, and it's only right, we can't expect people to wait to January the 1st, because a lot of them, if you look at the mandate that the state is doing and the security, the way the building's supposed to be, they're really coming down on how they want it done. I think we have to give them a chance to get it, because you have to be open by, if they wanna be open by April 1st. There's a lot of mandates on the buildings, how you have to secure them and everything else that goes with it.
Mayor, so I have a question
Okay.
for Mr. Van Vleck. So Randy, do you think we could almost handle this the same way we would with the liquor license? Instead of issuing a business license right away, maybe having a zoning verification? Letter that goes out and say, you're requesting to open a dispensary in such and such location. This allows for cannabis dispensaries, and then have some kind of language. However, we will not be able to issue a business license until you've received approval through the state.
Yeah, you could probably do that. And I think what we're seeing here is a challenge of having that 150-foot limitation. Clearly you have to give priority to the people who file first. Now, if you're gonna, and you have to set a kind of a date for when you're gonna start accepting these applications. And if you've already, and with the understanding that like I said, the existing licenses of medical establishments are gonna, kind of have an inside track. So we have to, and they're not gonna be processing those until after the first of the year, I don't believe.
That's right,
That's correct.
that's correct.
So I don't, certainly I suppose we could, if there's people who are gonna wanna put an application in and they're a new license, I think we need to advise them, well, there's an existing medical establishment within 150 feet of your proposed location, we're gonna have to wait until after January 1st to see how that one pans out before we can process yours. So that, it's gonna set that back, maybe that'll prompt them to go to a different location, but I think we would be within our rights, I suppose, in pushing them off until, after the state does its thing with the provisional conversion.
But right now, we don't have a single license, not medical or recreational, right?
We got
Correct.
medical.
Where?
Well, medical.
Oh, yes, we do, yes, we do.
Is that the one on
The
First
7
Street?
Clover, yes,
Huh?
on First Street,
The Bourne Old Plate?
yes.
Oh, okay. But
Right
this
now,
is what,
there's no spatial limitation, as I understand it, for medical establishments, so.
But-
I don't think they can get one pushed through and approved between now and the first of the year anyway.
my
Strange
recommendation,
things have happened, yeah.
my recommendation is that when they come the first time to talk to Angelica before they mail it to the state, that they can go to planning and development and make sure that they meet the state, specs. That means no, not close to a park, not close to a school, a Head Start, and all that. And you can get that letter as an intent and put in there as an intent for that building or for that establishment. And that, because if you come, I come in and I said, Angelica, I want to put one and across the street or less than 120 feet, there's a school or a park, then I come in with my letter. I mean, I said, I want to make it here, but I don't meet the specs. Then somebody else come in, which I'll know, then, and they might meet the specs because there may be 150 feet difference. You can go to planning and zoning. They will issue you a letter telling that you meet the specs as far as that building is, that it does not conflict with the state of New Mexico. And then they can bring that letter, and with that letter, you can date it and say, application.
I mean, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, because right now, we won't be playing games with people who think they're gonna be able to be number one. And then all of a sudden they can't get it because they're less than 300 feet from the park. So they can get that, you can get those letters from, the planning and zoning.
Anybody in our office can do this.
It's a verification letter pretty much.
Yeah, it's a letter of verification that building does qualify for the purpose of that industry.
And at that point, will the 150 feet be discussed? But if they've already purchased the
But if
building?
you don't, the only way you need to discuss the 150 feet is if I'm on the other side, on the other building, and then I come in and you got, 150 feet from the established building that already applied, that's what we're saying in the ordinance, there cannot be another dispensary. There'll be another dispensary at 151, but not 150.
So after they receive that verification letter, that sets the priority.
Yeah, that's it, the priority, that they have first priority for that building.
That's assuming they get the license.
Yeah,
Yes.
as soon as they get the license. And then,
So if there's 3 people in front of you and we told you no because your building's within 100 feet of
the school.
one of the other recreational businesses, we tell you no, they don't get theirs and you've already moved on and gone somewhere else.
That's
So
right.
we need to somehow set it up where we can say, at this point, yes, you're approved, this is what's gonna happen.
Mhm.
And if you don't, then
Yeah, because it doesn't do us any good to tell anybody, yeah, you can have it, and they're not even 100 feet, they're not 300 feet from the park.
so we
Yeah.
probably need some kind of yes, if this one doesn't go through, you're gonna get it. Do we need something like that? Just
But they gotta bring us something from planning and zoning saying that definitely it meets the specs of the requirement of the state of New Mexico and the city.
that'd be fair.
Not, because it doesn't do us any good to hold that spot and they can qualify.
Right.
They're not, it's not a thing about, all of a sudden you wanna come get a variant.
Mhm.
No, when you apply, you should meet the spec.
If we wait till January 1st, there's gonna be a line and there will not be no way to really vet it to the extent we should be vetting.
No, we need to do right.
If we start now, we can at least vet it without
Yeah.
being pressured with.
And I'll just send you the one that I currently have and we'll move forward with that one.
Okay. That's what I would say. I don't know. It's up to
Did you have a question?
I was just gonna ask if I could ask Angelica something. I think one of the things that was referred to was an actual example of something that Todd and Ralph had kind of alluded to, was that there's a business that's trying to open now that I think has applied for a permit, right? A business license. And then that falls into that category of being able to issue that now and then have a provisional cannabis license that will be issued at some other point that would go through that process that you.
No, I think at this point, we're just accepting applications, and then under the guidance of planning and zoning, we'll let them know that, yes, this building is deemed to be, qualifies for a provisional. I won't issue the provisional. My understanding is that provisional license will come with a packet from the state.
The state.
Correct. But in the
Can I ask a
meantime,
question? Is this gonna be a staff level approval? Because if these types of applications have gotta go through a planning and zoning commission process, that's gonna slow things down.
They don't have to go to planning and zoning, they have to get the letter from the planning and zoning office, which knows
Yeah.
the license. We're not saying they have to go before the planning, because we already gave the ordinance where they will be designated. This will only be getting, like, I go over to your office and I said, I bought this building, now I need to know if I'm gonna qualify or not qualify. And you tell me, no, Moya, you don't qualify. And that's all I need, is a letter from,
So someone's gonna go out there with a tape measure or something, or how are we gonna
they do
verify
it,
that they
My
qualify or
office
not?
does-
That's my question.
We do
The
that,
staff's gonna be making this decision.
no, we go to the planning and zoning department, we actually go out and measure.
and also they do something with the computers too, because he.
Yeah, we can measure.
I know that,
Doodler.
yeah, when I was doing the Xeon, they went in and they did it by, like, the thing, and then they went to the county and got some, my proper description of my property. And then that's when they told me, yes, you qualify, there's no such church. Then they said, well, you're like 200 feet from the other church and whatever. But they did it electronically, and then they did it the other way too.
Yeah, we can do it again.
Okay, people are familiar with this process, and they know they don't have to go through a hearing process, they just go into the office and take care of it this way.
Yeah, that's what I did with the liquor license that we worked on Second Street.
It should be streamlined. I imagine the only time it would be a long, lengthy process is anybody, say, based on what we discussed last meeting, if there was a variance that they wanted to grow in a C1, then at that point, that could take some time because they have to go through the whole planning and zoning.
That's a
process.
different one.
Yeah, I think that's
That's totally
fair.
different.
Yeah, and the regulations are really strict on that, you can't smell it from outside the building.
No,
And
right,
we
we have to
also-
have bins, filters, everything.
So we discussed this last time, right? It's the closest point to its property line to property line. It's not front counter to front door or whatnot. It's property line point, the closest point, correct?
Yes.
That's how you do it, liquor license, it has to be right from the property line.
All righty, Mayor. I think this is let's get to that real quick.
Let me explain something that was, I think somebody said a while ago. If somebody wants to buy a business license for business and not cannabis, that's not a problem. If they want to build it later on for cannabis, then they have to meet the same spec as anybody who applied for a cannabis license.
so I just wanted to say that's exactly what I'm referring to. A question is a business that will want to operate pre-cannabis legalization April. So it would operate as a business under whatever guidelines that are pre-April, and then potentially transition to a post-April one, which would be a full recreational.
That's correct.
And I think you talked to, I was just gonna get that person on the phone if you needed to talk to that. And I didn't know that this was a forum that would happen in. So I apologize for interrupting.
Well, the whole deal is if you want to have a business, you can buy like any other business, the license, as long as you meet the spec. But then we're going to a different area, which is an area of the cannabis, which is a different ordinance and different state regulation. Then they have to apply for that.
Right.
And
So
if they don't meet the spec, they're engaged.
Get it, totally, perfect. And I think that we won't have any roadblocks with that. The idea is just to be able to operate as a business and then transition later and not have one.
But that's not a guarantee
There's
you're gonna get a
process for
cannabis
both.
license. That just guarantees you get a license, the $35 license to operate a business.
Right, yeah, we're good. Perfect, thank you, sorry.
All right,
So I have one more question. Vicky was wondering if you could sell, or you saying if you could sell cannabis and tobacco in the same location? What's your take on that, Randy, is being able to sell cannabis and tobacco? I believe the lady that reached out to us last time you were online with us was wanting to have some kind of tobacco hookah smoke lounge on a patio outdoors.
Oh, that's event, yeah.
I don't I don't recall any prohibition against that. The challenge is gonna be that the hookah appeals to a younger crowd, and you can't have folks in your establishment that are under 21 unless they have a medical card. So that's gonna be her challenge, and that's gonna be your enforcement challenge if you allow those, because you can buy tobacco at 18.
But the state of New Mexico says
No.
to get a tobacco license, you need to sell, at least 80% of your sales has to be tobacco.
Well, then that probably is a disqualifying issue then. If you have to sell 80% tobacco products,
And
that's gonna put a bite in your cannabis
so,
sales.
exactly, that's how I read
Maybe
that,
not
so,
be interested in that.
yeah, so I wasn't positive if that was true, or just something I skimmed over and it was wrong, or what, so.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that, so I don't think, frankly, I don't think it's good practice. I think it's something that certainly should be discouraged simply because it's, it's different. Then you have that issue about allowing minors to buy tobacco, but buying cannabis. And it becomes a regulatory problem.
So Randy, the law has changed. You do have to be 21 to purchase tobacco.
Oh, okay, then I'm way behind the facts.
Yeah,
So that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, we should go back and see if there's, I know there's some recent legislation on tobacco and whether or not, if there truly is a percentage
Oh, that's right,
of
'cause
the
they ID.
business requirement, then I think those are inconsistent. I don't think it's consistent to be able to have both.
Okay.
We should take a look at that.
So are you saying, Randy, that if she's applying for a license to have a hookah lounge, come April 1st, that has to be either a hookah lounge or a dispensary retail store? It has to be one or the other?
I mean, there's ways of vaping and reducing the actual cannabis to a form that could be smoked in a hookah. So having a hookah lounge is not necessarily inconsistent with cannabis, except for the fact that you'll be consuming. You have to have all those requirements to have your cannabis consumption area. You have to be able to meet all those in order to have your hookah availability to smoke cannabis.
Well,
Ralph doesn't care.
let the state has told you.
Here, real quick, we're down to 10 minutes, and I think the next item is really important to discuss, and I wanted Randy to have some input in this. I don't know if there's any rules and regs on this. We had talked about this quite some time ago about discussion regarding additional permit fees for cannabis permits. To my understanding, I could be wrong, the business license is still set by state statute at $35. I haven't been told that we can manipulate that, but there was discussion by this commission to attempt to create some kind of new cannabis permit, which would help with the excess of application processes, and it's going to be quite law enforcement, you name it, everything. It's going to be, we're going to be busy. Once this happens, you can see we've already started to get some applications or requests trickled in. We got people asking about zoning questions all the day. I know I get about 2-3 calls almost a day asking about that. So what's your take on it? Have you heard anything, Randy, about if we can legally charge for that, an additional permit like we would for alcohol?
Absolutely. I've written several ordinances that impose an additional fee on cannabis establishments because of the extra work and administration and regulation that you're going to have to implement. I think it fits squarely within the time, place, and manner parameters, so long as your fees are reasonable. And so, the $35 is simply a business registration fee. It's simply with the privilege of being able to register your business so that the city can collect gross receipts tax. So if you want to impose some additional application fees and inspection fees and license fees things of that matter. So long as they don't creep up and become unreasonable, I think, those are things we can talk about.
Does that best live in a separate resolution or ordinance specifically to those fees, or is it something that should be added into our current cannabis ordinance?
Well, you can do it one of two ways. I mean, I don't know how you've done it in the past. I've always recommended, I think Angelica has heard this, is that you pass a single ordinance that says this is our city schedule of fees for everything. And that you publish an ordinance that says these fees are going to be set and adjusted and modified by resolution. So you can get your overarching ordinance that fees will be set by resolution, and then we can go back and adopt individual resolutions as the situation arises to set those particular fees. If you don't want to do it that way, you can put them directly into your cannabis ordinance as well.
Perfect.
All we have to do is do an addendum.
I'm trying to think of some of the other ordinances I've looked at. You know, some of them have a $100, $200, $300 application fee, $150, $200 inspection fee, those types of things. As long as they don't add up to an astronomical number, where you're essentially keeping people out of the marketplace, I think you're fine. Again, reasonableness is going to be the issue.
Any other,
Just any ideas, price, suggestions, something to start formulating something so I could get with Randy after this and
I
start.
think we had discussed before, 2,500 for the 3 complete permits, because there's really technically 3 portions in it. And doing a third, and if they're wanting the whole thing, it's 2,500. We had talked to some of them.
Yeah, we did.
That was, they're looking at doing these, and they thought that was kind of low, but.
So is that something, when Randy's saying 150, 200, is that gonna be reasonable for asking 2,000, everybody else is
No,
asking
it's not,
200?
because you're looking at 3 licenses divided by 3.
Put over 800
Yeah, it's not bad.
And when we look at the scope of what's gonna happen come April 1st, the city's not gonna be prepared if we gotta wait another 1.5, 2 years to utilize the GRT to bring in more police officers. This can at least help out something.
Yeah.
In Carlsbad, for example, we put 250 in there, 250 application, 250 license. I think there are some out there that are higher. It's one of those situations where the market's going to determine this, and you don't want to be the test case.
But we also don't want to undersell ourselves. We need,
True enough. I mean, and I guess my thoughts would be start controlling, and if it looks like the marketplace is going to run this higher, then raise your fees. I mean, you can always do that.
Supply and demand. Only have 150 feet to work with.
that's a lot of demand.
I can look around. Let me look around and see if I find some other. There's a lot of these ordinances that are starting to crop up. I know I've written 3 right now, and I'm trying to remember what I put in each one because they all kind of run together. So let me see what we got. I mean, and it's going to be your call.
Yeah, but I don't think 2,500 is that difficult.
And again, that's if you take the 3 permits.
Yeah, I mean, if I only got a dispenser, it's 800. That's not a big deal. And
I mean, think about what you pay for liquor. I mean, you only get $250 for a liquor license, and I know that's set by statute. And so
yeah, that's it. That's
type of regulation. If we find that we're going to have to do more regulation than we do with the liquor establishments, then I think we can justify a higher license fee. But remember, it can't be. There's case law out there that says that these types of license fees cannot be simply revenue driven. They have to bear some relationship to the actual responsibility that the city undertakes in regulating the business endeavors.
Yeah, okay, but then we have to have somebody enforce it too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, if there's some kind of rational and reasonable response, relationship to your cost, that's absolutely fine. If you were just to pop out of the air $10,000 because you need some revenue, that's not gonna work. But if you can say $2,500 a year we need to, make these types of expenditures, capital expenditures, people, whatever it takes. Reasonableness is the key here. It really is.
Yeah, I think reasonable is fine.
All right, we're gonna have to,
We have 3 minutes. Mayor, Ms. Kent's online. She has a question she'd like to ask.
go ahead.
Hi, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes. Okay, I missed it because I was trying to get here from another meeting. But I know you guys were discussing the hookah lounge, because I'm the person trying to put one in. Could you tell me what I missed about your decisions on that, please? Because I came in at the very end of it.
Mark, you wanna go over that with her?
I'd almost defer to Randy. I'm not sure we came up with a firm decision
No.
at this point. There's just discussion. And there's
I
some
don't think, we didn't. The challenge is gonna be, the regulations with respect to simply having a hookah lounge are different than the regulations in place for having a cannabis lounge. And you're gonna have to, the age requirement is the same as 21 to buy tobacco, is 21 to buy marijuana. So if your establishment complies with the more strenuous and more onerous requirements for having a cannabis consumption area, I don't necessarily see a problem.
Okay, and now, because we're not having that issue until after April, whenever someone is licensing, then I don't have that issue with a hookah lounge at this time, except to follow the mandates on cigarettes or stuff, right?
Don't sell cannabis in your establishment. And
Exactly,
and don't let people smoke cannabis in your establishment.
exactly. So okay, I understand, that's what I wanted to make sure. And then clarifying, if you change, you can automatically change completely if you're going into a cannabis lounge, you can take out the hookah component, correct?
Well, again, I think that's a challenge, and I hadn't really thought a whole lot about it. The challenge about we're gonna have some people smoking tobacco and some people smoking cannabis. I hadn't really thought about it. They smell differently. They emit different side effects into the air, and I don't know if there's a public health or a health component between the two. And that's something that may need to be explored. And at some point in time, let's assume you were granted the authority to do both. Something that might have to be taken away at a later date if we find that there's some significant negative side effects to secondary smoke from cannabis versus secondary smoke from cigarettes or other hookah material.
Okay, and, all right, so I'm getting that. Just to be clear, I've been in the cannabis business and in this kind of business in Portland, Oregon already. So I'm a little bit knowledgeable in what I needed to do or not do. And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing anything. And I know you guys are just beginning to set rules. Presently, the only thing I'm trying to do is a hookah lounge. My intent is to change everything over to strictly cannabis. It will not be mixed at any point. When cannabis becomes law, then I will change any and everything over to strictly cannabis.
I don't mean to
Frankly, I think
disturb
that's
you
a
right
good
now.
decision.
Randy, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
That's the entire intent.
Yvette, I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to close this because we have a commission meeting. So you're going to have to maybe call in later and visit with him. We need to get to our commission meeting.
Okay, thank you for answering. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy. I'll give you a call here shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Bye now.
You wanna know what's going on? Not you, but.
Yep.
Yeah, I got, I don't know, 3,900 somewhere. The street,
On Third Street?
Still past that.
Go past that one. Well, I'm there.